Hello, welcome to Miniature Realms. My name's Stuart, and Games Workshop have sent me something pretty cool. Let's take a look. Very soon, The Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim will be landing in our cinemas. That's December the 13th here in the UK, earlier in other parts of the world, I believe. And while this review video will have no direct spoilers to the film, there may be some indirect spoilers included, be that profiles, images from the film's characters. If you look closely at any of the book pages and things I show, they may well show you something that tells you a little bit about the film that you didn't want to know. So I'm just warning you ahead of time. It was not my intention to do that. I still don't feel, from looking at these books, I know an awful lot about the films. I don't think these are proper spoilers, but I thought it would be fair to warn you. And we'd known for a little while that Games Workshop was releasing a new edition of the Middle-earth strategy battle game, which was centered around a launch box with this film in mind, The War of the Rohirrim. And there are many other things that have just been announced that are going up for pre-order. In addition to the starter set, you can buy the rules manual on its own, the armies of books for Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and a host of other characters. In fact, today, during the time that I've been editing this, yet another character not pictured here has been announced for the game. Now, I won't be covering any of those other things in this video. I'm going to be focusing purely on the starter set, The Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim, that Games Workshop have sent me. And I'm going to be taking a detailed look at the set, at the miniatures, how well they go together, how good the sculpts are, looking at the quality of the publications, and giving an overview of what's in them, including some thoughts on the rules and the changes, but not going into super detail. I'm sure other content creators will definitely do that. Miniature Realms is proudly sponsored by Baron of Dice, premium wargaming dice. Over 500 styles, over 4,000 customer reviews. Welcome to the best dice on the planet. And if you're looking for a new set of dice for maybe a new army for the edition, do check out all of their themed dice that suit Middle-earth really well. And don't forget to use the Miniature Realms discount for 5% off. Link is in the video description. My intentions for doing this way is partly so the video doesn't end up being hours long. I want it to be something that you can watch in 20 minutes or so and get a good idea about whether you wanted to purchase this box. Maybe you're an existing Middle-earth strategy battle game player and trying to work out whether this set is right for you, or you're just going to buy a rulebook, or maybe even not buy the new edition at all. But also for the many people that will no doubt be interested in getting into this game once they've seen the movie, and maybe they've never even played a miniatures game before. So I do want to cover it from different angles and perspectives and experience levels for wargamers. So as we open up the box, you see the lovely brown plastic ruler, which I think we last saw in the Hobbit starter set, which is fantastic. And of course, loads and loads of plastic sprues. Now, if you are new to miniature wargaming and you've picked this up or got it for Christmas or something, having seen the film, then plastic sprues are the frames which all of the miniatures are on, and they are multi-parts and you have to glue them together. Now, there are 56 of these miniatures in total. We've got Haleth, Prince of Rohan, Hammer, Prince of Rohan, 24 Warriors of Rohan, Wolf, High Lord of the Hill Tribes, General Targ, and 24 Hill Tribesmen. You also get 2 Rohan houses as well, which are lovely kits. Now, this sheet is fairly standard these days in Games Workshop big box sets that contain miniatures and books. It's just there really to protect the books from scratches from the plastic frames. And in this case, you get a nice picture from the film, which as it stands, I haven't seen yet. And then we have the first of the paperwork in paper envelopes these days rather than plastic, which is nice to see. But you've got a 176-page rules manual, a 48-page scenarios and profiles booklet, and also a 3x3 double-sided playmat as well. So the first envelope contains that 48-page scenario and profiles booklet, but also a quick reference guide, which are always great for people who are new to the game and people like me can never remember the rules or remember what you need to roll for certain things. Always handy. And then you've got this profile and scenario booklet with another quick gameplay sheet on the back, including the profiles for the starter set. So if you're playing the starter scenarios, you can use them. Now, the reason it's 48 pages is because it's got all of the building instructions for the miniatures in there as well. I know a lot of people were curious about why it was so large or what was in it. Well, actually that's why it is. And then in this envelope, as you can see, we've got that 3x3 mat, which is really nice detail on it, and very shiny, so you will get a bit of glare from the camera. Now I won't dwell on this for too long. It's a kind of poster material, that's why it's so shiny. On one side you've actually got the objectives marked on, the other side exactly the same design apart from the lack of those objectives marked on the mat. Now it's really high res in terms of its imagery. It looks really cool. I do kind of wish it was that hard cardboard that you get in the 40k and the Age of Sigmar starter sets, though. It's a bit of a shame it's not. But I guess that was very much a budget choice somewhere along the lines, and I'd rather have that money invested into cool miniatures than on the mat. But for a premium price box like this, it would have been a nice touch, but I get it. The Rohan buildings are a previously existing kit, so not new for this set. Been out for a couple of years now, but they are really good and so versatile. You can build 2 buildings if you want from this set. There's loads of other configurations and things as well. And then the 2 halves of the starter set, you have 2 large frames of Rohan warriors. The little separate part on the end there which you can snap off is the archer frame, and the miniatures are really nicely laid out on there and look super crisp. Looking forward to putting them together. And then you have a hero frame for Rohan as well, which has got your 2 mounted characters and your 2 foot characters, and then it's rinse and repeat for the hill tribesman side. So you have this long frame with a bit that you can snap off one side that has the bowman on rather than the hand weapons and the spears and all the rest. Again, an absolutely packed frame with really crisp looking miniatures. I really can't wait to see what they all look like built and linked up together. And then of course we have the bad side, the hillsides characters, again 2 foot and 2 mounted. Thought it was a nice little touch to have pictures of all the painted miniatures just around the edge of the box. I remember back in the day when it all used to be advertising for other games around the edge, but this is quite a nice thing to do, and I did grab it a few times while painting. You'll see those later just for a bit of reference. Now there are a lot of miniatures here, a lot of multi-part miniatures, and that's one of the things that differs a lot from previous starter sets for Middle-earth strategy battle game, or Hobbit strategy battle game, or Lord of the Rings strategy battle game before it, that a lot of them use miniatures that have been around for a very long time, and many of those miniatures are single pose, single cast, nothing much to build. So this is different. These are proper multi-part miniatures, very much in the new Games Workshop styling, to the point where they're brilliantly designed and engineered so that they hide the few mold lines that are there, but you really need to build them the way they describe in the instruction manual. Gone are the days when you could trim off all your heads or your legs or your arms and then put them together yourself. If you do that here, you'll lose where you're going, you'll lose all your bits and things. So it is worth taking your time and following the instructions that are there, regardless of your experience level, putting miniatures together. Miniatures these days, I think you just need to follow those instructions, or at least build a few that way and get an idea for it. Now I decided I wanted to get the character models built first. I just really wanted to get them fully built and in hand, having seen pictures of them, and really get a feel for how well they would fit in with the existing Middle-earth strategy battle game ranges, which have slowly developed and changed over the years naturally. But I know a lot of people were a little bit concerned because they followed an animated movie. Would there be a really different aesthetic to them? Hanath actually comes with a few different options. They show them very clearly on the instructions, but I wasn't sure which to build them with, so I took a quick look at the profiles that are in this book just to see if it gave me a clue of which build to do, and in the end I just decided to follow the picture because it didn't really make an awful lot of difference. Now there is some information I found later on that, but luckily I hadn't made any mistakes. First point of note, while these miniatures are beautiful sculpts, really high detail, they are very small parts, and yes, That is a separate face that goes on the rest of the head. And with the characters, some of them have a couple of different options available, so you do have some choice. So should you lose one of those little bits of plastic, something really important like a face, you would have an alternative. Later on when we get to the rank and file, that isn't the case. You don't want to drop them, especially if you have something like a grey carpet, like I stupidly have in my office when I build models and paint models for a living, which is maybe not the best. But on the whole, it went together really, really easily. It's well engineered, and yes, I had to use my tweezers a couple of times. My hands aren't that big. I suppose that's just the nature of Games Workshop doing this kind of modern figure design, but on these more true scale 28mm miniatures rather than the heroic scale that you get with 40k and Age of Sigmar. So you've got that modern style of building. It's nothing new. If you've bought a Middle-earth strategy battle game miniature for the last couple of years, it's been moving that way, be it the Forge World resins or even some of the more modern plastics, lots of small parts and things. But these are beautiful miniatures. They are absolutely stunning. I think they're fantastic, and once they're together, the movement in them, it's just amazing. They're really, really top work, and if you enjoy the miniatures they've released in the last few years, I'm sure you'll be fans of these as well. But another little point of notice, this is the arrow from Halath. You may have noted it was missing. Luckily I found it and glued it back on. Because these parts are so small, some of them I think are a little bit liable to breakage. So if you've got your bowmen, the bows are a little bit thin and the arrows are a little bit thin. Again, they're in scale, and that's the way they should be. But I fear that a few players may well find that after a few games in, the odd thing may break. So we need to be careful with them. But on the whole, not a huge issue. But just be mindful when you're building your own sets that some of these little arrowheads and things are a little bit small. Now, I did mention about the aesthetics, that some people are a little bit concerned about the anime styling, and I don't see it myself. Yes, it's an anime film, but if you compare it with the more recent designs, and maybe you don't like the more recent designs, but I don't see any discernible difference in style or art style. Yes, they're made to look like the film, but then they also seem to look like the existing range as well. Maybe that's just the style of the miniatures design and it works, but I don't look at these and think, oh, that's cartoon-esque. And if I was just handed these without knowing the film existed, I wouldn't think these have been designed from anime. Now it's time to crack on and build some of the warriors. And again, I wanted to give feedback on how they are to build. So I decided to build one Rohan warrior and one hill tribesman, and kind of talk through my experiences for doing so as part of the video. Obviously, I'll go on and build everything else as well, but I didn't film building everything else. Again, very much a similar experience to the heroes, small parts like this. You can see me here. It's out of focus, I'm afraid, but I'm filing the flash off a face, or filing the little notch off a face, which you need to do so it glues together. I'm not going to lie, I didn't enjoy the separate faces, but I'm sure there was a really good reason for it, and once they go together they look absolutely fantastic, so probably worth it. Like I said, I didn't lose any. Maybe make sure that you've got a trace for any bits that do fall onto that, but other than that, it's pretty simple to go together. Didn't have any major issues, and they are absolutely stunning. A huge improvement on the really, really old Rohan sculpts that they're replacing, and I think they're fantastic. I really, really enjoyed building this, and I can't wait to paint it. So we go on to the hill tribesmen, and they're slightly more complicated than the Rohan warriors. More models with separate legs that you have to glue the two halves together, and then two halves of a torso. There's also separate weapon options for this, different options, which there weren't with the Rohan warriors. Again, I refer back to the profile to find out what they had, and then found the section in the book that told me how to build them and what weapons to build them with, should I want to use them in the starter scenarios. I missed that beforehand because I shot straight to building the miniatures, and maybe it's the miniature painter in me that tends to look at boxes first through the lens of the miniature. Little bits like this I'm never a huge fan of. The hands are already molded onto the spear and I've got to get them to match up with the wrist, but that's just miniature building. If you get the shoulders in the right place, it's fine. I did find sometimes there's a couple of mils out, even with the sockets being fairly defined, so I found it easy with the glue still being a little bit soft if you're using plastic glue, just to move them slightly so they fit well. Now, I would have absolutely loved to be able to get everything in this set painted for this video, but there was just absolutely no way I was going to be able to get it all done in time. I only had a couple of weeks prior to the pre-order date, prior to the date I was able to release this video. So I wanted to focus on building everything and really getting an experience for you and sharing what was in the box. But I have painted 2 of the miniatures you can see on the screen now. There is the Warrior of Rohan and the Hill Tribesman, and those will both form painting tutorials coming on the channel very, very soon. If you're new to the channel, 50% of the videos on this channel are hobby or painting guides or painting tutorials, so look out for them very, very soon. So if you're watching this on day of release of the video on a pre-order day, the first one will be up on the following Tuesday, or at least that's the plan, and the other one not too long afterwards, maybe within the same week as well. So do look out for those. As I mentioned earlier in the video, the building kits themselves aren't brand new. They've been out for a couple of years, but they are absolutely wonderful. I've built plenty of them before, but I didn't want to spend too long in this video building them because I know a lot of people watching it will have seen them. But I'm going to assume that some of you maybe haven't. They're modular. You can build them in so many different ways. The examples in the book are pretty standard builds, but even as you start playing around with the parts, you can see how many different sort of setups you can make. I've built 2 similar builds, one a little bit sort of more higher status than the other, so the horse's heads on the top of the doorway there, maybe smarter windows. This one here is a little bit plainer, and you get little fences and barrels and things as well. Such great kits to get in a starter set. And here are a few pictures of the ones I built a few years ago to give you an idea of what they look like when they're painted. And obviously you probably can see the studio painted ones in all the artwork anyway, so you don't need me showing pictures, but it also shows you and gives you an idea of the different kinds of builds that you can do. And as you can see for this one, it's almost 2 put together. I've seen multi-story versions of this. You can also kit bash them with other sets as well. This is one Rohan house and a Lake Town house from the Middle Earth range as well that I kit bashed together to use as an in for games of Mordheim and Old World, but I'll definitely be using for my Middle Earth games as well. All in all laid out, that's quite a lot of stuff in the box. It did take me a little bit longer than I expected to build them. I think the kits are a little bit more complicated than I expected, but it is lovely to see them using those modern techniques which give you these beautiful multi-part miniatures that we don't really see with Middle Earth strategy battle game. It's lovely to see them now with this modern design. So all those miniatures finally built, it was time to settle down and actually get a feeling for the rules, really. And my dog Balin decided to join me, as you can see there. Now, this isn't going to be a huge man reads book kind of section. I'm going to try and avoid that as much as possible. There are channels out there who will do a very, very good job of that. And I play Middle Earth strategy battle game very narratively, very casually, and there'll be people that pick up on changes in far more detail than I would. But I still want to give you a bit of an overview. So let's get started, and these are the 2 bits that contain rules within the book. So we will start by having another little look at the scenarios and profiles book. So we've been looking at it a lot. We've been looking at the construction guide inside. You've got that gameplay summary on the back and the profile for the miniatures that are included in the box. So if you want to play the starter scenarios, you could use that. Of course, you have the slightly more in-depth quick play summary guide as well. And as I've already said, a lot of the pages in this book are the building guide. In fact, I think it's only really the first 16 pages which are things to do with the scenarios and the profiles for the miniatures that are in the box. So as we open up the book, the first page really is just a kind of contents telling you what you've got in the box and what it's for, and that's where I found the instructions of how to build the miniatures to play the scenarios in the book. And then you have 4 scenarios, and they kind of add a little bit more complexity to each side. You've got these designer notes box that tells you a little bit about the scenario. This one's basically saying there are no heroes or special actions or anything like that in this game, just to get you used to the basics. And then each scenario, this is scenario 2, it just adds a little bit more. So maybe adds a hero in, advises you to leave a certain rule out, to add a certain rule. So if you're new to the game, that'll be perfect. If you're an existing player, you'll probably just plow in and play the scenarios as they would do normally, but it's quite handy. Another thing I really liked is you've got these little tactics section as well in the scenario, and that kind of gives you an idea of what you're supposed to be doing, which sounds obvious, but it's not always. And I think if you're a new player, that's quite helpful. So after the scenario pages, you get to the profiles. There are only 6 profiles in the box in total. So you've got your 2 heroes for good here and your warrior of Rohan. There are no other army list or profiles in the box. If we compare with the previous editions warriors of Rohan here, you'll see there are some subtle changes. So the fight and shooting statistics have been split into 2 on the profile, but essentially they work in the same way. You'll notice that courage has changed. It tells you what you need to roll on 2d6 now, rather than the number that you add to a 2d6 roll. And you also have a new initiative stat as well, which you use for certain actions in the game. Very much the same with the evil profiles as well. So you've got your 2 characters and your 1 warrior. And this page really tells you about where to go next, about the future army books that are on the way. And also down here, the match play guide is mentioned, which I thought was interesting. Now, I may have missed some communication on this. Now, this is the current or soon out of date or now out of date match play guide. And that, I believe, has 18 scenarios. And the one it mentions in the box here has 24. So that says to me there's a new one on the way if it hasn't already been announced. So look out for that. So let's have a look at the rules manual. Apologies for the glare occasionally on the shiny parts. Now, the first thing you notice is that it's slightly thinner than the previous edition. So 174, 175 pages or something like that. Previous edition, there's 220-ish. Now, it's nothing really to worry about. There's no less rules in this. I know a few people are concerned that the game has been dumbed down and things stripped out. It is definitely not the case. Some lovely artwork inside, and then we get onto the content. So now I will try and limit this from the Man Reads Book thing. There's some really good YouTube channels out there that do an excellent job of it, really going through in detail. I'm not going to do that here, but what I'm trying to illustrate here is what the book looks like, the design. It's a beautiful looking book, and for those existing players, this should all be very recognizable, very similar kind of layout, similar order of things in the book as well. So that anatomy of the profile page looks extremely similar to the previous edition. For anyone that's concerned that this game has really changed, it hasn't at all, and that will become clearer and clearer as people start playing this game. That is very much the Middle-earth strategy battle game that people love. Code of conduct is still there. There might be a few changes and things, but the basic principles, as we turn to that page, the basic principles of the game are very much the same. As you've already seen from the stat line, while there's a couple of changes that seem big, essentially they're not. They didn't really change the way the game actually works, just the way that it's displayed to us, and the way we would read it. So as I was reading through the other evening, and that really was when I read it on the sofa with the dog there, I didn't film the whole thing, it did feel easier to read than previous editions. The wording seems a little bit clearer, and I really liked the way it was laid out. And then I read an article just before coming and recording the voiceover for this video that explained that that's what they were really trying to do, trying to make the wording a little bit tighter, a little bit easier to understand and read. And from my point of view, that really comes across. That's not to say there aren't changes in the game. The priority roll has changed slightly, but the only difference now is that whoever wins the priority gets to choose whether they want to go first or not, rather receiving that prize automatically, which isn't always a great thing. I would say that match play has both stayed exactly the same and changed at the same time, if that makes any sense whatsoever. At its core, it feels the same. The essence of it is the same, but some of the scenarios have been reworked in the way that you get more victory points, meaning that there's a little bit more flexibility and granularity probably to the results you can achieve in those games. The way you choose army lists is changing as well. This isn't a review of those army books. I don't have those army books. I know there have been some leaks of them, and so some people may have seen certain army lists and certain pages, and I'll cover that on another video. But essentially, when you get to the table, match play games will work just the same as they always have, really. And that's when we get to the end of the rules, and the point I was making earlier about not losing any rules with the page number. So we get to the end of the book here, and we have a lovely double page spread for the new Rohan miniatures, which we find in this set, and we turn the page, and no surprise, we've got the same thing from the hill tribes as well, and they look absolutely fantastic. And that's it. We're at the end of the book. We're into the contents. If we look at the last rule book as well, and at the same point in that book, that's where the rules end as well. And all the pages we're kind of missing. The difference between these two books is just all of these colour pages, some of it advertising the other books and things out the back. So for people that were worried about a thinner book, meaning a dumbed down set of rules, as I mentioned earlier, that's not the case. Yes, you might have liked those colour plates with all those painted miniatures on, but that's the only thing you've lost. That's the only thing that's missing. The rule book isn't any lighter at all. I think it's a lovely set. You've got so much in it. The miniatures are probably the best set of miniatures they've ever produced. There's quite a lot in there. Yes, there have been more in starter sets before, like the Pelennor Fields one, but they've not all been brand new, modern Games Workshop sculpts like this. These are just absolutely fantastic. Now, I will be doing a much more in-depth review of the set and the rules and all of the community reaction around it, talk a little bit about some of the army list ideas and the things that are coming out as well with my friend Dan on our Hobby Hour podcast, which lives on this channel. A few of you may remember the Out of the Frying Pan podcast that Dan and I used to do, which was just Middle-earth. This is kind of its stepchild. This is what was born from it when we started to talk about other game systems as well. Now, if you're watching this video on release day or pre-order day, I should say, then the Hobby Hour show will be going out the very next day on this Sunday evening. If it's after that point, just check on the channel and you'll be able to find it, and it's a much longer discussion than this shorter review video. Thank you very much for watching the video. For any of you that are undecided about the set or just excited to see what's inside, I hope the video was useful in one way or another. Thank you very much for Games Workshop for sending it to me. It's very exciting to receive my first preview from Games Workshop for the channel as well. So that was really, really cool. So thank you for all of you existing subscribers that have supported the channel over the years and enabled it to grow enough for Games Workshop to get in touch and offer me this set to have a look at a little bit early. It was very, very cool, and I love Lord of the Rings, and it's a game I'm looking forward to fully getting back into alongside the old world and all the other stuff I do. They are not going anywhere. So look out for lots more content on the channel relating to this release. There's going to be a special edition, the Hobby Hour. I chat with Dan about the rules coming up this very weekend, so do look out for that. We spend a lot more time going through the rules, a bit of a deeper discussion about the release. I wanted to keep this video at a reasonable length to have a look inside and give my first thoughts, but there'll be a much more in-depth review and thoughts on the whole package, what's to come with Dan on the Hobby Hour. So definitely make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss out on that one. If you've enjoyed the video, please do give us a like, drop a comment below, and if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do so. If you're an existing subscriber and you want to support the channel, there's lots of links below, affiliate links. There are links to the channel sponsor, Baron of Dice, and of course I have a Patreon, like all YouTubers these days, but it's a really great way of supporting me to have the time to make these kind of videos. So it's greatly appreciated. Just check it out. There's a link in that video description and you can see all the tiers there. But thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I'll catch you soon.